Great. Welcome back to Tech Entrepreneurship. It's great to see you guys. Thank you guys, Louie, Marianne, Tim, John, for showing up. Yesterday I had a prior engagement or an engagement that I had to attend, and it was in regards to entrepreneurship. And a couple of interesting things. So today we're talking about valuation again, but I wanted to make clear a couple of points about how this is, yet again, an art, not a science, especially for a startup. But today we're going to drill down a little bit deeper and talk about how we might be able to justify that valuation a little bit more. And so does anybody online right now have any idea how you might, and I'm just looking for an intuitive answer. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be right on, but does anybody have any idea how we might improve the chances of proving our valuation? So we know it's subjective. We know it's very arbitrary, and it's, value is oftentimes in the eye of the beholder, very much like as if we were buying a house. What kinds of ideas might you have, if any, on how to improve the chances of achieving a value that is defendable? Anyone? Anyone? Comparison to similar companies or products, be organized and document your approach. Tim, you're very close to what I'm looking for. A comparison to similar companies, similar products. Now, obviously, these companies and these products have resources, but they started from somewhere, so they are a very, very good analog for your business, and you certainly can use them in defending your business valuation. And it's okay, because the reality of it is, we have, when we're talking about valuation, we're talking about evolution versus revolution. Evolutionary versus revolutionary products. Now, it's been my experience that if no one has ever done what you're looking at doing before, chances are it's not going to succeed. Chances are it's not going to succeed. If somebody, okay, let me give you an example. Let's take Groupon. Let's take Groupon, for instance. Groupon has a number of copycat or a number of competitors that have entered the market. The problem with Groupon and the problem with many of these competitors is it sounds and is a very effective tool for consumers. And it's somewhat of an effective tool for businesses to utilize Groupon as well. But no one has ever been able to make money at it. No one as of now that I know of has been able to make money with that concept that Groupon has. Okay, so that was somewhat a revolutionary product. I haven't really seen it play through, but the reality of it is most of our services, most of our products are evolutionary in nature. Do we all subscribe to that? A revolutionary product would be the printing press, maybe gunpowder, things along those lines that would be real game changers in our society. Something like Google, something like a smartphone. I mean, these are all game changers, and yet there is a hint of evolution in each one of these products. But Marianne says market research, and you're also getting closer, much closer to what I'm looking for. And I'm not going to give you the answer just yet, but the point being, going back to Tim's comment, is if you are able to identify companies that are successful within your sector, within your industry, and present that to your friends, family, and fools, or your seed round investors, you're going to have a much better chance of not only raising funds, but you actually now have a model that you can follow and build on. So you may have second, third, fourth, maybe it's 100th mover advantage. You know, there's a first mover advantage, then you've got second mover advantage, and in that case, you might be the 100th company to try to create a similar product. But you have a model, and you can do the model better. Okay, so that's what you have to prove, and that's one of the things that you want to stipulate, or one of the things that you want to articulate in your fundraising and in your discussions with your investors, potential investors, about the valuation of the business. Market research is also critical. Market research is also very critical to understanding the value of your company. So for instance, let's say that I'm in the aerospace industry. Parts within the aerospace industry are very expensive in relation, maybe a washer, and I've seen this. I was at a factory, I was actually at a small aerospace company, we'll say their factory a couple of years ago. And a gentleman handed me some washers, you know, the washers that go on a screw. And so I'm looking at these washers, and I said, wow, okay, they look interesting. There's nothing, you know, they're round washers. There are a few interesting grooves on them, but they didn't seem like anything special. And he said, what do you think I sell each one of these washers for? And I had a handful of them. I had a handful of washers. And I said, well, you know, thinking this is the aerospace industry, I thought, well, $10, you know, $10 a washer. You know, washers you can buy at Home Depot for pennies. And he said, no, higher. And I thought, okay, well, 15. And I didn't want to play the game for too long. And I said, okay, just tell me what they're for. I mean, what they sell for. And he said $220, $210, right in that range per washer. And I looked at him and I said, are these things made out of, you know, platinum and, you know, all sorts of other precious metals? What do you got in these things? And he said, yeah, they are. They do have a little bit of some special alloys in there, but that my total cost of ownership, excuse me, I'm getting just about ready to sneeze. Excuse me. My total cost of ownership is about $6 to $8 per washer. Total cost of ownership, and this is something that you're going to need to know. Total cost of ownership is all of your COGS. What are your COGS? Your labor and your OH. What is OH and what are COGS? What is OH and what are COGS? This pen is terrible. Anybody online, what are COGS? Yes, but what is cost of goods? What are cost of goods sold? Cost of goods sold are your raw materials. These are your inputs. You have your labor, and you have your overhead, which are your, basically, your fixed expenses. And your COGS are typically variable, and these are both variable and fixed. So, Total cost of ownership for this gentleman, including plus shipping, was $6 to $8 per washer, and he was selling them to the aerospace industry for roughly $210, $220 per washer, and that's what the market would bear. So to Mary Ann's point, part of your valuation is going to be the market research that you're able to complete that shows, back to Tim's point, what your competitors are selling their units for. What is it that the market is willing to bear, and what is your total cost of ownership per unit? And again, back to last Thursday, it's not what you sell your product for where you make money. It's what you make it for. It's what you make it for. Now, if you're able to justify a $210 price and your total cost of ownership is $8 because it happens to be the aerospace industry or a very technical industry where they value safety to an extreme, and they're willing to pay for that extra alloy so that nothing goes wrong, well, then you're in business. That's part of your valuation. That's part of justifying your valuation. So, market research is absolutely correct. A competitor analysis is absolutely correct. I'm going to put this here. But there's one other thing that I was looking for. When it comes to valuation, we have the market research. We have the competitor analysis. But one of the things that I have found that really, really commands attention when it comes to your defense of the valuation of your company is this. What is that? Somebody online, tell me what that is. What is that symbol? Absolutely. It's a beta. So what does a beta mean? What is a beta? Tell me what a beta is in the context of, say, science. It's a test. Absolutely, but it's a test. It's a test, and thank you, Mary Ann, you're right. You're able to test your product, test your theory. The reality of it is this. Everyone asks me, and this is the whole chicken and egg, and today's class is going to be the chicken or egg. What comes first? And I get this question a lot. Aram, listen, I need money, I need to launch my product, I need to launch my service, I got to get my business going. I'm just looking for some advice on how much I might need and the valuation, how I'm going to piece all that together, et cetera, et cetera. Well, you know me, in this class and in most things that I do in life, I like to work things backwards. Yes, I wanted to know too, what comes first, the chicken and the egg? Well, I'm going to tell you, when it comes to tech entrepreneurship, I'm going to tell you what comes first. What comes first is the beta. Now, if you are able to conduct a beta, if you're able to do a test and go through what we call the proof of concept, you're cooking with gas. The proof of concept will allow you to justify your beta. Well, how? Well, you have a product, you have a service, you're going to need to test it out there with a number of individuals. Maybe it's a focus group. and you're going to give it away. You're going to give your service or your service or product away in your beta. Here's how this works. I had a student the other day talking about some software that they wanted to launch, and they were talking about how much money they needed to launch it. And I said, okay, well, time out. I think the first thing that you need to do is work it backwards. You need to test it in the marketplace. Why do you need to test it? So that you can figure out what it is that people really want, what it is they really like, because your hypothesis of what people need and want could be completely off base. Completely off base. You may think that the market needs and wants your particular widget, but until you test it, you're not going to know. Once you're able to mine that data and you give your product, you give your service away, you then have the means to start building a valuation and defend it. You can then say, well, you know what, I figured out that people didn't like this part of the functionality of it. People wanted more of this. And so the third thing you're going to do is you're going to do with your focus group, you're going to provide a survey. And this is on the back end of this beta. And the survey is going to be open-ended. It's going to be closed-ended. And you're also going to have a scaled response. A scaled response is on a scale of 1 to 7, 7 being the best. What do you feel about my product or service? How do you feel about my product or service? Scaled response measures intensity. A closed-ended survey, and you're going to have each one of these in your survey. You don't want all of one or just a couple of one. You want every single one. A closed-ended is basically multiple choice. Multiple choice can be tricky. How many of you have taken a survey and they give you 4 answers and none of those answers the one that you want to choose? So it can be a plus and a negative, in the sense that if you are looking to achieve a certain result, you're looking to achieve a certain answer, people will tend to pick the closest answer that you're looking to have them pick. You're going to have multiple choice answers. You're going to have a closed-ended response. Open-ended is their written or oral answers. This one here is going to tell you more about your product, your service, the beta, and the success of it than any of the other two. You definitely want to have all 3 of these. You're going to be able to figure out things like pricing. You're going to be able to figure out things like target demographic. And we know, more importantly than the demographic, what is it that we need to know more of? It's not enough for us to know who our target demographic is. What is it that we need to know more of? More about? What do we need to know about the target demographic? We need to know, and think of last week. Think of last week. We need to know the psychographics of the demographics. Are you all on the same page with me? Once you're able to collate, format, and beautify this information, you can then use that as a defense for your valuation. You can say to your investors, listen, we have done an iteration. We have actually completed a beta. We have tested this in the marketplace. And we know what the market wants. We know what the market is willing to pay. We know the demographic, and more importantly, we understand the psychographics of our demographic. We know what it is that they want, and we are tailoring it to them. And this is where we begin with the justification of our valuation. And that's where you end up going through your financials and saying, look, this is my worst case scenario, my base case scenario, and possibly my best case scenario. We now are able to tie that together with your beta and say, I've defended it. You're answering the questions, and this is one thing that you should be doing and you should keep in mind. You need to answer the questions before they're asked. You need to start eliminating a lot of the questions, because as an investor or an angel, I'm going to say to you, well, how do you know that your target demographic wants this? I mean, it sounds like a great concept. It sounds like this platform is something that everyone that everyone that uses Facebook needs. But I don't know that that's true. Have you conducted any kind of a beta? Have you gone through the proof of concept? This is how you get past the chicken and the egg scenario. Well, I need money, but I can't launch because I need more money because I need to start the business, but I can't start the business until I get money. I mean, it's the whole chicken and egg. You're going to have to put in a little bit of your own energy. You're going to have to put in a little bit of your own money, and you're going to have to do the beta on your own. That iteration, and maybe it's 2 or 3 betas, depending on the size of your focus group. Because we know that a focus group is a sample of the population, right? Or a subset. A sample is a subset of the population. You need to be able to get a very accurate, I'm going to ask you, how accurate is this? I mean, did you do this with 4 individuals, or did you do this with 40? The larger the subset, the more credibility and the more validity you're going to have in your valuation. Can our opponent, success failure, be included in that justification? Absolutely. Excellent question, bud. Excellent question. So the question is, can we use our competitors' failures and say, look, they didn't do this, or they did do this and they failed. We're going to change this. Or you can say, listen, this is the way they do it. They have part of the secret sauce that we feel that is maybe being under-managed, and we're going to put more resources to it. We think we can do this and do it better. And they're already, despite themselves, despite our competitors' weaknesses, they are doing so well. We think that if we concentrate on it, we will do several times better. You can absolutely use, in your competitor analysis that Tim had brought up, you can absolutely use your competitors' failures and weaknesses. In fact, you should, because that gives me a benchmark. And a benchmark is a comparison. What is it that you're comparing yourself to? Who is it you're comparing yourself to? What is it that makes your product, your service better than your competitors? Who is it that you're benchmarking yourself against? Who is it that you're benchmarking yourself against? And here's a key point in how to phrase this. I correct this quite often. I had a student the other day submit to the Edson project, and the gentleman had said in his summary that unlike Facebook or unlike Google, my product does this, this, and this. And I said to him, wait a minute, that's like going golfing with, say, Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson and saying, hey, listen, unlike your clubs, my club does this. Well, it doesn't really matter because they're 10 times better than me, right? So don't knock your competitor. I don't like to sell that way. I don't like to do valuations that way. And I don't particularly like it when people try to knock their competitor in order to bring themselves up. You need to stand your product, and you need to stand on your own 2 feet. You need to be able to justify what you're doing, not by saying somebody else is worse. That's just politics. That's just pure politics. I don't care for that. I want to know what makes you better without necessarily knocking them down. So, when you're doing your competitor analysis, you might want to say, very much like Google and like Facebook, our product does this. In addition, we have expanded it to include these benefits and features. So that way, instead of knocking Facebook or Google, which I see a lot of people do, they're successful. You haven't gotten there yet. Even though you will, you haven't gotten there yet. I want to see you say, very much like Google or very much like Facebook, my technology does this, and we have included or expanded our suite of offerings into these categories that provide X benefits and X and Y features. Does that make sense? Does everybody understand that? Don't knock your competitor. And the other thing is this. You acknowledge that what Facebook and what Google is doing in terms of their business is actually working. Okay? And it is working. They are doing well. You haven't gotten there yet. And then you, by association, you are saying, I can do this too, and add to what they're doing in terms of success. How would you like to be associated with a company that does something similar to Facebook and Google, but one step further? I might. I certainly might. But ask another question. And demonstrating the competitor's success can show the market is ready for similar products or service. Absolutely. Absolutely. And to Bud's point, and this is where you do your beta. So you can say, listen, this has already been done. I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I'm not trying to create a revolutionary product. This is an evolutionary business, and it's an evolutionary business model. Let's take a look at Walkmans. You guys know what Walkmans are? I don't know how old everyone is. Maybe I'm dating myself. But Walkmans came out when I was a youngster. That's an old word. I'm not that old to use that word. But it came out when I was a young lad. Well, that's another old one. Okay, it came out when I was a young boy. And for 20 years, for 20 years, 22 years, Walkmans came out, electronics companies kept putting these things out, you end up having the MP3. The evolution of the Walkman continued. But no one had won the market. Whoever invented the Walkman was not able to capitalize on the market. They had first mover advantage. It was only when Steve Jobs came in and said, I am going to start developing licensing agreements and royalty fees for artists, and I'm going to create a iPod, and I'm going to tie the two together, and I'm going to win market share. He was the thousandth mover in that industry. He was the thousandth mover in that industry, but he went back into his team and in his mind and said, hey, this works. Everybody wants a Walkman. I mean, everybody wants mobile music. No one has won the market. They have done this and this and this correctly. And maybe there are some things that were not done correctly. And that was the tying up of the recording artists. They have not done this and this and this necessarily as well as they could, or they left this out completely. I am going to tie everything together. And there's part of your competitive analysis. There's part of your competitive analysis. Yeah, Sony was a major player because they're an electronics company, but where is Sony now when it comes to mobile music? Let me ask you this, just by a show of hands online. I don't know how many of you have iPods, but how many of you have at least one iPod in your household? How many of you have at least one iPod in your household? Some of you have a few. Some of you have a few iPods, but has multiple ones. I have my original one from like 8 years ago, or 6 years ago, whatever it was, but it's been a while. I have had this thing for a long time. And I still have plenty of memory on it. The problem is now when I plug it into the car, it doesn't work because it doesn't recognize that technology, so I have to go and get another one. But now who has won the market? Who has won the market? Apple has won the market. John has 3 iPods in his household. How many iPods do we really need? You know, I mean, as an individual, I know individuals that have 3 and 4, and it's just for them. It's not their entire family unit. It's just them. It's just them. Apple has won the market. They did their competitive analysis. They found the gap, and they were able to create. They did a beta too. What is it that you would want in the look of a mobile music device? Is it a big clunky plastic deal, or is it more of an MP3 player looking thing? How slick? What are the colors? Is it going to be metal? Is it going to be plastic? What is it going to have a picture on it? I mean, a screen? They did this through a focus group. They did this through a beta. And the most innovative companies in the world do betas. When you're starting your business, to justify your valuation, you need to do a beta. It's pretty simple. I hope I have brought my point across. Any questions or comments on this? Bud has 6 in his household and 2 non-Apple players. Well, that's interesting. That's a lot of music. That's a lot of music. Which is great. Which is fantastic. Now, I want to hit home again that a sample is a subset of a population. Where is this? Oh, here we are. Sample is a subset of a population. So your beta is going to either have to be 1 time or 2 times with a lot of individuals, or it's going to have to be a few iterations with several individuals over a period of, say, 2 months to 6 months. You don't want to go much further beyond 6 months because technology changes quickly. Technology changes quickly. And there's only 4 residents. Wow. That's pretty interesting. And it's kind of like, do we really need all these? You couldn't put all the music on one, or two, I'm sorry, you couldn't, you had to have 2. It's a luxury item, and we like that. So sometimes it's about the look of it, too. I'm taking this one to the gym. I'm taking this one on a long-distance trip. Whatever. Or I'm taking this one on the plane. But make sure that your samples and that your iterations are done with a credible number of individuals. And make sure that at the very end of your survey, the very end of your beta, you give them a survey. This is at the very end. It's at the very end of your beta. You want to ask them questions. What did you think about my technology? What would you change? What would you add? What would you subtract? Was there anything in particular that we haven't talked about or that we didn't show you that you think individuals would like? But you give it away initially, and you're going to figure out that that's going to be worth gold. That's going to be worth more than you can possibly imagine, because then again, you get a much better justification for your valuation. Now you can do this, sometimes you can do this on a Kickstarter platform, a crowdfunding platform. Sometimes you're going to have to do it in the marketplace on your own. You're going to have to contact acquaintances, some friends, some family, and you're going to get a little bit better, and you may give them a Survey Monkey. If you go to surveymonkey.com, maybe they fill that out. You might have to give them an incentive. The point is, just do the beta. I don't care how you get the individuals, just do the beta. Just do the beta. All right? Then we can start talking about things like the number of shares. Because once you have the valuation, the value of your business, then you back into the number of shares. We have decided that we are going to have 10 million shares authorized in our business. But how many of them are you going to sell? How many are you going to sell to investors? And it's really going to be in the form of a percentage. What percentage of your business in your seed round, your infancy, your startup, are you going to give away? Now that you've done your beta, you're going to get an idea how much it's going to cost to start your business up, how much working capital you're going to need. You don't want to give away very much in the beginning, but at the same time, you need money. It's a double-edged sword. You want to give up 5 to 15% max in your seed round. Closer to 5. Closer to 5, which means that you better have a real valuation defendable with a beta. And then we can start talking about your startup expenses. And then we can start going over your 36-month pro formas. What does pro forma stand for? What does pro forma stand for? Someone, anyone? Pro formas. What's another word for pro formas? Projections. That's right. You can do 48-month. You can do 60 months pro formas, projections, and that's fine. But I would concentrate, when you're focusing on your investor, I would concentrate on less than 36 months, because after 36 months, it really gets fuzzy. It really gets fuzzy. And your startup expenses? But I think I told you in the very beginning of the semester that one of the things that I believe is the cause of most startups failing. So it's something like 80% of all startup businesses in the United States fail within the first 2 years. That's a huge number. Even if it's 60% or so, I mean, it's just a huge number. Why is it? What do you remember me telling you why I believe that startup businesses fail within the first 2 years? What is that key component that you need in order to succeed? That's it. I love it. Lack of working capital, not enough working capital. Your startup expenses, your 36-month pro formas are nothing without your working capital. I can't tell you how many businesses I have seen. How many businesses have you seen? Let me ask you this. How many businesses, and we'll just use the restaurant industry because it's a little more visible. How many businesses have you seen where you saw the restaurant and they were packed day in and day out? They were packed. It was a hot spot, and then 2 years later, they're out of business. Or less than 2 years later, they've shut down. Most of that is attributable to their lack of working capital. They just started the business assuming that they would be cash flow, not profitable, but cash flowing right out of the gates. And they didn't really have a mechanism. They didn't have that working capital to pay the bills on time. And then they start having to delay payments to their employees. And then the next thing you know, they're starting to delay payments on rent. And the next thing you know, the whole business has to shut down. Working capital in any startup, I don't care if it's tech or low tech, high tech or low tech, working capital is the focus that you need to have when you are starting your business. How much do you need? So if you tell me, Aram, I have done all the calculations, and I have figured out that I need, over the next year, over the next 12 months, all I need is $30,000 to get my business going. I mean, really paying all the bills, et cetera, et cetera. What is it in my mind? What is it in your eyes? Again, looking through the VC lens, what is it that you know that they really need? If they tell me $30,000, what is it that I think that they really need? Tim says double. Bud says 60. He's saying double also. Anybody else want to venture to guess? No. It's not double. It's 3 times. It's 3 times. Now that doesn't mean that you need the 90,000 today. You might take it in tranches. So you take 30,000 for the first 3 or 4 months. Then you take another 30,000. I mean, you go back to the well. Because the reason why I say 3x, and this is a rule of thumb, and I've seen this day in and day out with businesses that say, Aram, you know, this is all I need, and then 3 or 4 months later they're like, well, let me tell you, we got this huge order, and we can't fulfill this order unless we get some capital because I got to buy this piece of equipment and I got to hire 3 more people.
Well,
we got the order. I just can't fulfill it.
What am
I going to do? Opportunities come up. What I've seen this also where somebody comes back and says, you know, I had anticipated every thing that I thought that I thought I had everything down to a science. And again, a startup company is not a science. But I thought, Aaron, I had this down to a science. And one of my buddies is just leaving a major corporation. They're just leaving Intel, or they're just leaving Microsoft, they're just leaving Apple or Google. And I want to hire her. I want to bring her on board. She's phenomenal. She's just absolutely incredible. And I have to have her on part of my team. There's no one that I know or trust that does a better job, et cetera, et cetera. So there you go. You need additional capital. And Bud asks, as an investor, wouldn't you want to under-invest, double with the mental preparation to take another chunk of shares in the future? Wouldn't you want to under-invest? Yeah, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to run out of money. So it's a good question, Bud. You just don't want to run out of money. If you're telling me that you need 10,000, I know you need 30. And you can come back to me and see, here's the thing. You can come back to me 4 months later and say, okay, Aaron, I need more funds, but the valuation, the company's doing really well. The valuation has increased a little bit, so the same $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 that you had given me before isn't going to get you the same amount of equity. And that works. Because I then know that I am throwing money, good money on top of good money. It's kind of like Facebook. Facebook's valuation continued to increase. And they would have come back numerous times to whoever their VCs and their angel investors were, and they would have said, hey, listen, we're looking for additional funds, but it's going to be at a higher valuation. You're not going to argue good business. You may say, well, I may try to negotiate the same valuation. Hey, you need the money. You might go out of business if you don't get the money. But at the same time, my initial investment goes away too. So I may be more inclined as an investor to say, okay, yeah, I get that. You're doing well. You've hit certain milestones. You have justified the valuation increase by hitting those milestones, and now you want additional funds. I'm going to throw more good money on top of good money. In fact, most of the time, I tie fundraising to milestones. So let's put that down here. You tie the fundraising to milestones. That way, if you hit those milestones, I don't mind. I've already agreed. I have already agreed to use some of my dry capital to fund your business if you're able to achieve these certain results. I'm more than happy to do it. More than happy to do it. I love feeding success. I love feeding success. It's an important part of understanding value and valuation. So although you may think that you only need one round of financing or one lump sum, the reality of it is you may sell yourself short and you may give up too much equity of your business unless you do it in tranches. So if you tie your fundraising to milestones, that means you're going to be receiving funds in tranches. And it's tied again to milestones. It's tied to milestones.
But
I have something else I want to add. We're going back to the beta. A lot of people don't ever do betas. They expect to get funded without one. And then when they do get funded, or if they get funded, they don't really know what they're doing. And then they end up spending the money that the investors gave them on that beta instead of for the business. Do you understand what I'm saying? So try to do the beta on your own without the funding from the investors. Yeah, sure, it's great if you got funding from the investors, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to burn through that capital doing the beta and then saying, yeah, I got this, I'm ready to go, but then there's no more money. So be prudent and be aware that this happens a lot. You end up using your working capital for your beta, and that shouldn't be. You should be going through the proof of concept, in my opinion, on your own. And then maybe the second or third iteration where you really know what you're doing and now you understand your business model, you really understand where the revenue streams are, where the verticals are, and what you might be able to improve and increase, then it's okay to maybe use a little bit of that investor money to do a larger sample of your product or service. So when you're going after funds, be very aware that your working capital should be used for your business, not necessarily for a beta or an iteration, because the reality of it is you're just winging it. And you've got to get it so that you really understand what your model is and where you're going to be making money from. And that confidence is going to resonate when you're talking to investors. That confidence and that you have done it, you've proven it, and you're ready for action, that is going to resonate. That's going to come across in your voice, in your financials, in your business map all day long. All day long. Any questions or comments? Any questions or comments thus far? Any questions or comments? This is not the only time you're going to need funds. Let's go along the continuum here. So we know that growth is a what kind of function? Growth is what kind of function? Excellent, Tim. Excellent, bud. And let's just say that this is your what point is this? What point is that? That's right. That's your break-even point. And anything above and beyond this is your cash flow positive. And this here is your working capital. But it's also called Death Valley, because if you don't have enough capital to get to year 2, your business is going to die. Now, you're going to do, this is pre-launch. Right here is the point at which you launch your product. Your pre-launch is going to be in the ideation and the creation phase. And this is where you're going to do your beta. That's going to be where you do your beta. Whoops. Let me move it over a little bit. That's going to be where you do your beta. Now, you're going to be looking for money, and hopefully you get the money
so
that you can launch. This is your first round. We'll say this is your seed round. And this might be the 3S. Friends, family, and fools.
And it
And it might also be, maybe there's 4S. Friends, family, and fools, and founders. There are 4S. So that's going to be your seed capital. But the reality is the founders have been putting money in right here. And then as you start growing, you're going to need another tranche of capital. And maybe that's because you recognized another opportunity. As you run your business, you're going to find that the things that you think you're doing right are wrong, and you're going to be able to correct them. And the next thing you know, you're going to say, "Wow, I see the light. I see where I need to be going." And so you may need, and you're going to say, "This is a huge opportunity that I didn't really recognize." And so you're going to do your seed round here. You're going to do a round B here. The question I have for you is the valuation going to be the same as your seed round? Is the valuation going to be the same as your seed round? Anyone, Bueller, anyone, is the valuation going to be the same at the same value as your seed round? So you got your seed round here and you got your round B. No, absolutely not. And you can even justify it by showing, look, we've met these milestones, and we're growing, and we're only a year away from break even in our estimation. And the next thing you know, you end up going for another round here, and that's your C round. And then another round here, D. And you continue to grow and build the business. You continue to grow and build the platform. So you're not going to have just one round of financing. It's going to come in tranches, and that's what these are. It's going to come in tranches over a period of time. Your seed round, your B, your C, your D round, and it's going to continue. And you're going to continue to give up equity in your business. But the $100,000, let's say it's $100,000 for round number. The $100,000 that you received in your seed round is not going to give the investors the same amount of equity that they get in their B or C or D round. It may get them a fraction of that percentage. Whereas before, maybe they were able to get 10%. Maybe now it's 6%. The valuation is increased, and you're able to justify it because you have grown. And you can visually show them this. I love illustrations. When somebody tells me that their valuation has increased from 6 months ago, I can argue with that. I can negotiate with that all day. But when they visually show me and say, we did this, this, and this along the way, these are the steps that we took, and this is where we're at, I have a harder time negotiating. I'm looking at the growth. I'm looking at them show me a chart. This isn't rocket science. This is not rocket science. And you may be able to use, here's the key here. When seeking funding, I want to see that 50 to 70% goes towards guerrilla marketing. This is the, and then here you have some labor, and you have COGS, and you have overhead, and all of these are going to be a certain percentage. Right? This is called your use of proceeds. Your use of proceeds.
Why
do I want to see so much money going to guerrilla marketing? I'm not talking about marketing. I'm not talking about advertising, and then you're going to do some traditional advertising, but why do I want to see guerrilla marketing? Why do I want to see that you are going to spend money going out trying to get PR? Maybe that means you host a contest. That's guerrilla marketing. You remember me talking to you about how Betty Crocker tried to create diffusion, which is the process of awareness, by holding a contest in the United Kingdom with hundreds of women for a pre-made pie crust. I want to see that your guerrilla marketing is going towards diffusion. And again, diffusion is creating awareness. And that could be a contest. That does not cost you a lot of money. But it gives you a lot of distance because now you're inclusive of a lot of individuals. That's good guerrilla marketing. Getting articles written. Maybe that means you send the journalist a sample of your product, your software. Maybe that means giving them a seat on your in your platform for a year for free. And that would have cost them maybe $1,500, but they get it for free. Whatever it takes, whatever the guerrilla marketing that you can do, that's where I want to see the money going. Bud says exposure, client solicitation, absolutely. This is what we call, guerrilla marketing is what we call the man on the ground approach. And it's not, I'm not trying to say anything negative or positive about any other gender, it's just man on the ground. It's the man or woman on the ground approach. How about that? I didn't make the saying up, but now I'm changing it. So you got the woman on the ground approach. That means you're going to go after it. You're going to knock on doors. You're going to make calls. You're going to send emails. You're going to start building your social media. You're going to start doing everything you can in the guerrilla marketing aspect to really get this thing moving. And the reality of it is, as an entrepreneur, you are going to spend, as an entrepreneur, you should spend 80 plus percent of your time on guerrilla marketing. It's all about sales. It's all about sales. It's all about branding. It's all about growing. You need to be out there hitting the pavement. You're going to get PR. It's not going to come just natural. You've got to do it. You've got to create it. You've got to build that energy. You've got to create a chain reaction. And you're going to use some of that money to travel to trade shows. That's guerrilla marketing. You're going to put contests on possibly. You're going to write an article and hopefully get submitted. You're going to contact journalists and tell them your story. And you're going to contact dozens of journalists and tell your story. You need to evangelize. You're going to contact the cult members that we talked about that are prior to the early adopters, and they are going to try to evangelize. You got to give the product or service away to them. This is where I want you to spend your money. With Zycam, let me tell you how Zycam worked. The gentleman that I funded, called me up one day, and he said, Aram, I think I've invented the cure for the common cold, or the closest thing to it. Actually, he said, I think I've invented the closest thing to the cure for the common cold. I've done clinical studies, I've done a sample, I've done a beta, this product works. The sample size is this, we've done a couple of them. And I was like, wow, okay, this guy's crazy, but he has data. And he said, okay, listen, I want to launch this product nationally. And I only have $2 million. Okay? So how are you going to do it? And he says, I'm gonna create a bouquet, a basket, and I'm going to put a bunch of funny, nice things, and I mean not funny stuff, I'm going to put a bunch of really nice things. It's going to be a really nice bouquet, and I'm going to spend our $2 million, I'm going to put a basket, I'm going to put the Zycam in the basket with some information on the clinicals, and is the beta. I'm going to put some information on the beta and information on how it works, and I want to send it to every pharmacist in the country. And I said, do it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Makes sense.
It makes sense to me. I don't know. We only have a couple of $1 million.
It worked.
It worked.
It worked.
It worked. Beautifully, it worked.
If
you ask any marketing professor what it would take to launch a product nationwide, where you're competing against every major pharmacy in the world, you have no brand equity, no one has heard of you, you have no shelf space, you have no accounts whatsoever, how much would it cost to launch your product? They're going to say minimum you're going to need 30, 40 million. Minimum 30, 40 million. He did, through an effective guerrilla marketing campaign, he launched Zycam on a $2 million budget. And then the next year he calls me up and he says, look, we've got a bunch of distribution nationwide. We're not in every city in every country, I mean in every state, but we're in a lot of the major cities now. We got a couple million in revenue. We made it back. So I need a couple more million in revenue, and this is what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to buy a Super Bowl ad. He spent a couple of $1 million on a Super Bowl ad. And boom, it grew again. Within about 6 years, his guerrilla marketing, his use of proceeds, the sales went from 0 to about 130 million in revenue. All with the guerrilla marketing mentality. But he had done a beta that was credible and believable. And every time he came back to me for money, do you think it was at the same valuation?
No.
No, it was at a higher valuation. Was I willing to throw more money on top of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw the milestones. I saw the growth. I saw how it worked. Questions or comments? Questions or comments? Fantastic.
What
a great class today. You guys are awesome. I appreciate the dialogue. More than you know. Because the students watching these recordings benefit from your questions and answers.
Thank you very much.
Karan, I think we're over and out. Same time, same channel, but we're going to be on. Hold on one second. We're going to be on same time, 12 noon tomorrow, which is Thursday, and we're going to have a regular Thursday class. So no changes for tomorrow. See you guys. Over and out.